Hello students and welcome to Learning Unit 6, where Learning Unit 4 was about the flow of international news through traditional and digital media. Learning Unit 6 zooms in on the digital ecosystem itself, social network sites, the concept of the network society, and the critical question of who gets access to it. In other words, where Learning Unit 4 gave us the macro picture, the flow of news globally, Learning Unit 6 gives us the micro picture, what actually happens inside the digital networks that now carry cultural content like K-pop. This unit is directly examined in 3 of your assignment 2 questions. Question 1.3 on social networks and mass self-communication, question 1.4 on the political economy of online flows, and question 1.5 on the digital divide. Everything we cover here connects directly to the K-pop scenario. The platforms that carry K-pop, the theory that explains why fandoms organize so effectively online, and the structural inequalities that determine who in South Africa can participate in that digital culture. Let's map the unit so you know what's coming and why it matters. Section 6.1 covers the definition of social network sites. The Boyd and Ellison definition is compulsory for question 1.3a. You must know the 3 criteria and be able to explain what makes social network sites unique. Section 6.2 introduces Castell's network society, including the crucial concept of mass self-communication, also directly required in question 1.3a. Section 6.3 and 6.4 look at SNSs, or social network sites, in political revolution like the Arab Spring and global activism. These provide the theoretical bridge between individual digital behavior and collective political action. Section 6.5 is the political economy section. Chang, Himmelboim, and Dong's study of hyperlinks in cyberspace is explicitly named in question 1.4. And section 6.6 is the digital divide. SASSI's 4 approaches in question 1.5a and the ITU ICT Development Index, question 1.5b. The gold card for 6.6 signals that this is the most heavily weighted section for the assignment. So now we look at the core content, and you need to memorize this definition. The Boyd and Ellison definition is not optional background knowledge. It's explicitly required by question 1.3a. You need to be able to define social network sites accurately and explain why this definition matters. The 3-part definition reads as such. Social network sites are web-based services that allow individuals to 1. Construct a public or semi-public profile within a bounded system, articulate a list of other users with whom they share a connection, and 3. View and traverse their list of connections and those made by others within the system. The emphasis on traversal, the ability to navigate other people's networks, is what distinguishes SNSs from simple messaging tools or websites. Then we also need to look at the key uniqueness claim. Boyd and Ellison's most important point is often misunderstood. What makes SNSs unique is not that they allow individuals to meet strangers. What makes them unique is that they enable users to articulate and make visible their existing social networks. This distinction matters for K-pop. BTS Army didn't primarily form through SNSs connecting strangers to each other. It was built by people who were already fans, connecting through SNSs to make their shared identity visible and to act collectively on that basis. So let's look at social networking versus social network sites. Boyd and Ellison distinguish between social networking sites, which implies forming new relationships between strangers, and social network sites, making existing networks visible. The term social networking is actually a misnomer for most SNSs. Participants mainly communicate with people already in their extended network. So just to reiterate, question 1.3a requires this definition that is there at the top of this page. If you provide only a casual description, for example, Facebook is where I post pictures and connect with my friends, you won't receive a mark for the definition sub-requirement. So make sure that you understand that this is a technical academic definition that is required from you. So this slide translates the abstract definition into concrete platforms, showing how each plays a specific role in the K-pop ecosystem. YouTube or Google, which is hosted on Google, is the primary discovery mechanism. The recommendation algorithm amplified K-pop to non-Korean audiences through engagement loops. When a user watched one BTS video, the algorithm suggested more, creating a funnel of discovery that bypassed traditional radio and television gatekeepers. Former Twitter, now X, the coordination is a coordination platform. K-pop fandoms pioneered the use of Twitter for organized streaming campaigns. They coordinated globally to push songs to #1, manipulate chart positions, and direct international press attention to their artists. The BTS Army chapters in South Africa also coordinate on Twitter. Then we have TikTok and ByteDance. The viral spread, the mechanism. The dance challenge format structurally advantages K-pop, which is choreography centered. Users recreate dances, generating organic content that spreads to non-fans. TikTok's algorithm is particularly aggressive at pushing engaging content beyond existing interest communities. Then the Weverse or Vlive, it's purpose-built fan-to-artist platforms that's owned by Hype, which is BTS's label. These platforms monetize parasocial intimacy, the emotional connection that fans feel with artists. This includes paid subscriptions, exclusive content, and virtual fan meetings. This is SNS architecture deliberately engineered for fandom labor. So note the owner structure. YouTube is owned by Google in the US. TikTok is owned by ByteDance in China. Spotify is from Sweden. Netflix is the US. And this connects directly to question 1.4. K-pop content is Korean, but the infrastructure is the global north and China. So ask yourself, which of these platforms do you think South African K-pop fans will use the most? Are there access barriers for some platforms, but not for others? This will connect to question 1.5 and the concept of the digital divide. So here we look at some core theory, the Network Society by Manuel Castells, and this is once again essential for question 1.3a. Manuel Castells is the most important theorist in Learning Unit 6. His concept of mass self-communication is explicitly required in 1.3a, and his broader Network Society framework underpins the entire unit. So the key concepts that Castells provides is the network society, a society in which information flows lead increasingly to decisions being made on a global scale in real time. Society is structured around networks at every level, individual, organizational, and societal. Castells prefers information age to information society. Then we have informationalism. The new mode of development is driven by knowledge acting upon knowledge. This is opposed to industrialism, where we see energy acting on matter. The productivity here comes from generating and applying information, not from manufacturing physical goods. Demassification, this is a movement away from mass production and mass consumption towards a decentralization, a diversification, and a customization. This applies directly to the media. Mass broadcast television has given way to personalized, algorithm-curated content, like Netflix, for example. Space of flows, power and social movements operate in a global space of flows. It's not tied to physical location. K-pop fandoms think local, it is rooted in their country, but act global. They coordinate internationally to push charts and support artists. And then you have mass self-communication. So when we look at this critical concept, traditional mass media was one-to-many. One-way broadcast. The sender is the broadcaster, receiver is the passive audience. But in mass self-communication, it is many-to-many. It's globally distributed, it's self-generated content, it's self-directed emission, it's self-selected in reception. Yet it is still mass communication. It reaches a potentially global audience through P2P networks. Its backbone is computer networks. Its language is digital. Its senders are globally distributed and globally interactive. So how does this apply to the K-pop fandom? The BTS Army exemplifies mass self-communication. Fans generate their own content like fan art, translation, reaction videos, streaming campaigns. They direct their own communication, so they coordinate campaigns without central editorial control. They self-select into communities by choosing to follow certain army accounts, yet they collectively reach a global mass audience. And here, Castell's famous quote comes into play. Any post on the internet, regardless of the intention of its author, becomes a bottle drifting in the ocean of global communication, a message susceptible of being received and reprocessed in unexpected ways. K-pop fans' TikTok video is that bottle. So just a tip. You need to apply mass self-communication to K-pop in question 1.3a. The key move is showing that K-pop fandoms are not passive consumers, but active, self-organizing producers who collectively achieve mass reach. This brings us to the Arab Spring, or the so-called MENA Uprising from 2011, which is Learning Unit 6's key case study for understanding SNSs as tools of collective action. It also demonstrates the limits of SNSs, which connects directly to question 1.5's digital divide questions. Now, there are two schools of thought. Firstly, the digital evangelists argued that social media was the revolution. Twitter and Facebook enabled the rapid coordination, information sharing, and international attention that toppled governments. This view celebrates SNSs as inherently democratizing. Techno-realists, on the other hand, countered that social media's role is overstated. Most citizens in Arab countries had no internet access, which is a stark demonstration of the digital divide. Some techno-realists went further. They said that secret services used social networks to identify and detain activists. But then we have the balanced view that social media facilitated communication and coordination, but was not sufficient on its own. The digital divide meant it was a tool for a digitally connected minority. So what social media did do, according to Ran and Salem, facilitated rapid communication between protesters. It enabled citizens to act as journalists, transmitting photos and videos to mainstream media. Using diffusion theory, it connected groups with high levels of shared identification. It enabled slacktivism, which is online support without physical risks. What it did not do is it did not create the underlying economic and political grievances. It did not make the revolution happen. It accelerated and amplified processes that were already underway. And we can connect this to K-pop activism. If we look at Canosia and Gangaria, which is one of the prescribed readings, they document that BTS Army's activism during COVID-19 is a direct example of K-pop fandom as mass self-communication and a global social movement. If you're using this particular source as one of your three readings, this particular slide will really contextualize those ideas. Now we look at the political economy of online flows, and this is core content as it is directly required in question 1.4. Question 1.4 explicitly names Chang, Himmelboim, and Dong. This is not optional background information. You need to demonstrate an understanding of this specific topic and the study that they did. So what their study did was they set out to identify the determinants of international flow and hyperlinks in cyberspace, and they developed a model based on two sets of determinants. One, ownership and control of the mass media, the state-media relationship at the national level, so state-owned media versus private or public media, and then market orientation, the media-market relationship at the organizational level. Commercial media, in other case, versus public service media. They had three hypotheses, and all were supported by the data they collected. H1, the world systems. These are the core nations that receive more incoming hyperlinks than semi-peripheral and peripheral nations. This was confirmed. The USA and UK are hubs. Most periphery nations are minimally connected, even when they are technically online. Then we have H2, the hypothesis 2, which is political economy. Privately owned media have more outgoing hyperlinks than state-owned media. And this hypothesis was confirmed. State media in Sudan, Kenya, Turkey had 0 external links. 8.7% of private or public media had external links. And then hypothesis 3, that deals with political economy, says public service media have more outgoing hyperlinks than commercial media. This was also confirmed. 97.2% of commercial broadcasting websites had no external links, whereas public service broadcasters linked outward more. So what was the big conclusion? Although the internet is technically open and borderless, the invisible structural boundaries of political economy and world systems uh, largely reproduce the offline information hierarchy online. So Chang, Himmelboim, and Dong call this closed international flows in the open global network. So how does this apply to question 1.4? K-pop's global distribution depends on platforms owned by center country corporations, YouTube, Google, Spotify, Netflix, and one Chinese corporation, TikTok, ByteDance. These companies are commercially oriented. They have no obligation to serve South Korea or South African public interest. They are driven by engagement metrics and advertising revenue. So does K-pop confirm, extend, or challenge the world system theory? You can argue that it complicates the world system theory. The content is semi-peripheral, but the infrastructure dependency on center country platforms is confirmed. The pattern is more complex than simple imperialism. So question 1.4 basically requires you to consider whether K-pop confirms, extends, or challenges this theory as it applies to online flows. And this is almost the same as the three-part evaluative move in question 1.2. And you'll see that it makes the assignment internally consistent if you see this particular connection. So now let's deepen this political economy discussion by showing what cyber imperialism looks like in practice. Chang's key finding back in 2010 said that the structural imbalance of the offline world is reproduced online. The same center-periphery hierarchy that determines which countries dominate traditional news flows also determines which countries function as hubs in the global digital network. Here we look at cyber imperialism. A handful of countries, primarily in the global north, are connected to many other countries through dense networks of incoming and outgoing hyperlinks. Most countries in the global south have minimal or no linkages. They are technically online, but effectively isolated from the global information network. For K-pop specifically, we can say that even as K-pop achieves global reach through semi-peripheral Korea, the distribution infrastructure, YouTube, Spotify, Netflix, are all located at the core of the world system. This creates a new form of platform dependency. South Korean cultural content flows globally, but the pipes through which it flows are owned by Silicon Valley. Then we can also look at the Matthew effect of digital networks. The most connected nodes, USA, UK, attract more connections, making them more central and harder to displace. So let's think a bit. What do you say? Can a country's cultural content be a counterflow while its distribution infrastructure confirms the dominance of the center? This is precisely the tension that question 1.4 asks you to analyze. Now we come to the digital divide, its definitions, and SASSI's 4 approaches. Once again, this is core content and it is directly required in question 1.5a, which requires you to define the digital divide and critically discuss at least 2 of the 4 approaches identified by SASSI. And here we will cover both requirements. Firstly, we look at the definition. The digital divide is the gap between the access of individuals, households, organizations, countries, and regions at different socioeconomic levels to ICT and internet usage. It's not just about urban-rural access within countries. It also encompasses the vast chasm between Africa and the developed world. So then we get to SASSI's 4 approaches. Approach 1 is technocratic. The digital divide is primarily an infrastructure problem. The solution? Government policies, universal service provision, deregulation of telecommunication. This approach tends to see the divide as a technical gap that can be closed by deploying the right technology. The second approach is the one of social structure. This says that the divide is rooted in deep structural inequalities of income and education, and technology alone cannot overcome these. An important point here is that it is unlikely that the fundamental inequalities of social stratification, which are endemic throughout post-industrial societies, will be overturned. That's according to SASSI in 2005. This is the most pessimistic, but arguably the most realistic approach. The third approach is the information structure and exclusion approach, and this combines the first two. Social segregation and marginalization are starting points. ICT access is examined with particular reference to geography. The divide is simultaneously social and technical. You can't fix one without addressing the other. Your fourth approach, modernization and capitalism. It draws on Castell's network society and global capitalism. The industrial system and the network society are dependent on ICT for managing production and information. Capitalism creates the technology, but also creates the economic inequalities that prevent universal access. Castells coined the term fourth world to describe populations so excluded from the network society that they are effectively invisible. So how do we apply this to K-pop access in sub-Saharan Africa? Approach 1 applies because mobile data infrastructure is uneven. Even where mobile networks exist, data costs can consume a large proportion of daily income. Approach 2 applies in the fact that 36% of South Africans below the poverty line cannot afford a smartphone or data plan, and that represents a structural exclusion from K-pop digital culture that ICT deployment alone cannot fix. Approach 4 also applies. The same global capitalism that created Spotify, YouTube, and Netflix also creates the economic conditions that make access to those platforms unaffordable for millions in sub-Saharan Africa. So remember, you need to pick two approaches, explain each of these approaches, and then evaluate each approach's relevance to sub-Saharan Africa and K-pop access. A strong answer will pick the approach that allows the most analytical traction. Social structure and M and C are often the strongest pair. Now we get to measuring the digital divide. Once again, this is core content directly required in question 1.5b. The ITU's ICT Development Index is the primary international benchmark for measuring countries' ICT progress and is the data source required by question 1.5b. There's three sub-indices: the Access Sub-Index, fixed telephony, mobile telephony, international internet bandwidth, households of computers, households with internet. This sub-index tells us whether the physical infrastructure for ICT access exists. So then we have the use sub-index, internet users, fixed wide broadband subscribers, mobile broadband subscribers. This tells us whether people are actually using the infrastructure. Access doesn't automatically translate to use. And then the skills sub-index or ICT capability. Adult literacy rate, gross secondary enrollment, gross tertiary enrollment. This sub-index captures the human capital dimension, whether people have the foundational skills to use ICT meaningfully. South Africa's significant educational inequalities fix this sub-index directly. So what you will do, you'll see that this question is flagged as AI resistant. It requires you to retrieve data from the ITU website or World Bank data at the time of writing. Required figures, at least 2 from the percentage of individuals using the internet, mobile broadband subscriptions per 100 inhabitants, fixed broadband subscriptions per 100 inhabitants, South Africa's overall IDI score or ranking. What to include in your answer, the specific figure, the source, the full URL, and the date on which you access the data. Then you will interpret what the figures reveal about South Africa's position in the digital divide using the Access, Use, and Skills framework. So here we situate South Africa specifically within the digital divide framework, the context that you need to interpret your live data and to write your personal reflection. South Africa is a country of profound contradiction, one of Africa's most economically developed nations, yet one with extreme inequality. The digital landscape reflects this contradiction precisely. So let's look at mobile first internet. In 2013, the South African Network Survey said that 71% of South Africa internet users access it via their mobile phones. This matters for K-pop. Mobile internet access enables social media use, but often cannot support the high data demands of streaming platforms. So who is an internet user in South Africa? English speaking, currently at school or university or work with university training. Who is not? Those who cannot easily read or write English. People older than 44. Poor people. People from rural communities. And this maps directly onto who can participate in the K-pop digital ecosystem. Then we look at social networks as the internet. About 2 million South African internet users access the internet only through social networks. Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, they use that as their portal to the internet. And this creates a constrained information environment, which is very different from the rich K-pop digital culture accessible to urban, data-rich users. The Matthew effect, the rich get richer and the poor gets poorer, ICT use reinforces existing socioeconomic inequalities. Those who can afford devices and data become more connected, skilled, and employable. Those who cannot fall further behind. This is the structural logic that perpetuates the digital divide despite mobile technology presentation. So for your personal reflection, for those students living in South Africa, you will have direct personal experience of some version of this divide, either as a digitally connected urban student who can participate in K-pop culture or as someone who navigates real constraints on that participation. So we're asking you to theorize your own experience. So let's be very explicit about what each question requires from you from Learning Unit 6. 1.3a, 3 things to address. Define SNSs using Boyd and Ellison's 3-part definition. Discuss how SNSs facilitate international communication with K-pop as the primary example. Show specific digital practices like YouTube algorithms, Twitter coordination, Weverse monetization. Apply Castell's mass self-communication. Argue that K-pop fandom is mass self-communication. It's self-generated, self-directed, self-selected. Yes, mass reach is done via P2P. In 1.3b, you will identify one real currently active South African K-pop fan community with a verifiable URL. It must be active within 12 months of their submission date, and you must have personally accessed and observed it. Then you will use Chang, Himmelboim, and Dong in question 1.4, where we ask you 2 determinants, the ownership control and market orientation. And here your key argument will be that K-pop content is semi-peripheral, but infrastructure dependency is on the center country platforms. So does this confirm, extend, or challenge the world system theory applied to online flow? And then in question 1.5, we will look at the digital divide. You will use the different approaches, and then you will also retrieve live data to look at the indicators that are relevant to South Africa. And finally, here we have a reference slide, and you can use it for revision and to ensure that you correctly attribute the various people in your assignment. Boyd and Ellison, that is the definitive SNS definition, and it has three criteria. Castells talks about the network society and about mass self-communication, which is mandatory for question 1.3a. Chang, Himmelboim, and Dong talks about the political economy of cyberspace, issues on ownership and control and market orientation that determine the online flows. Chang talks about cyber imperialism. Sassy has our 4 approaches to the digital divide. Lesami provides us with a digital divide definition. Van Dijk talks about the network society concept, which is coined independently of Castells, and the Matthew effect. Then Rana and Salem wrote about the Arab Spring. Cominello and Anzera talks about digital evangelists versus techno-realists. And finally, Wallerstein also talks about the world systems theory, the theoretical foundation that Chang et al. Applied to cyberspace. So for your assignment, remember that every theoretical claim should be attributed. For each Learning Unit 6 concept you use, you will need to cite the scholar who introduced or developed it. And obviously, this is also relevant for Learning Unit 4. Thank you for listening to this class. You can re-listen to it. I will also post the PowerPoints as is for you on my UNISA so that you can refer to them as well. We will host several live assignments to sessions on Teams where you will also be then able to ask us any questions that you might have. Goodbye.